After I paid off my house early, my neighbor told everyone I was a drug dealer laundering money. Cops came, family ghosted me. Normal people don't pay off homes at your age, he said. But when I caught him flipping a house on disability, I sent a tip to the state. I was standing on my front lawn in Fort Collins, Colorado, watching two squad cars idle at the curb when the officer closest to me asked, again, if I would consent to a search of my home. His voice was calm, but the neighbors had already gathered. Phones were out, whispers everywhere. I felt like my whole life had been yanked inside out in less than an hour. And all because my next-door neighbor, Mitch, had told half the block that I must be a drug dealer. The officer repeated himself. I could see the doubt in his eyes, the way he looked at me like I was hiding something. I'm 33, I work from home, I keep to myself. And apparently that made me suspicious enough that someone had called in an anonymous tip. Except I already knew exactly who made that call. Because 10 minutes before the police showed up, Mitch had walked right up to the edge of my yard, arms crossed, face tight and smug, and said, "Normal people don't pay off homes at your age." I didn't even know how to react. I'd spent years grinding, overtime, freelance work, saving every dime I could to pay off my starter home early. It was the one thing in my life I was genuinely proud of, and now I was being treated like a criminal for it. As the officers stood there waiting for an answer, I watched my aunt across the street turn away from me like she was embarrassed to even be seen near my house. She didn't wave, didn't look back. That hurt more than the cops showing up. Because last week she told the family that I must be hiding something, and nobody defended me. Not once. All because Mitch had run his mouth at the last neighborhood cookout. The officers eventually left, no search, no arrest, but the damage was already done. Half the neighborhood thought I was some kind of mastermind criminal, and the other half pretended not to know me. I barely slept that night. I just sat in my living room staring at the mortgage payoff letter framed on my wall, wondering how something I'd worked my whole life for had turned into this nightmare. But the real spiral started the next morning. I woke up to find Mitch standing in his driveway, talking loudly, loud enough so I accidentally heard him, telling another neighbor that I was bringing dangerous people into the neighborhood. My hands were shaking. I tried to ignore him. I tried so damn hard. But then I saw something that made everything in my chest turn cold. Mitch was unloading boxes of hardwood flooring from the back of a truck. Big, heavy boxes. He was carrying them himself, lifting, bending, hauling them into his garage with no problem at all. Which would have been totally normal, except Mitch had been on disability for over a year. Bad back, couldn't work, couldn't lift, couldn't stand for long periods. That's what he claimed to the government anyway. And as I watched him drag another box inside, I realized something that made my heart race for an entirely different reason. He wasn't just renovating. He was renovating the whole damn house. New floors, new appliances, new countertops, contractors in and out, deliveries every day, all while he collected money he wasn't supposed to. And suddenly, all that humiliation he'd put me through, the rumors, the lies, the police, felt very small compared to what I was now holding in my hands. Because if I sent the right tip to the right agency, his perfect little lie would collapse overnight. But that wasn't the real twist. The real twist came when I learned why Mitch had targeted me in the first place. And it was so much worse, so much more personal than anything I could have imagined. Before all this started, I honestly thought Mitch was just an annoying, nosy neighbor, the kind every neighborhood has. The guy who comments on your lawn height. The guy who asks way too many questions about your packages. The guy who always seems to know when you come and go. But when I bought my house in Fort Collins 4 years ago, Mitch was actually the first person who came over and introduced himself. He brought beer, told me I seemed quiet but normal, and even said he was glad someone stable had moved in next door. Looking back, that word stable makes my skin crawl now. I bought the house with a plan. I didn't come from money. I didn't have a safety net. I grew up watching my mom drown in debt after my dad bilayed. So when I landed my remote tech job and finally saved up enough for a down payment, I swore to myself I would never owe anyone more than I absolutely had to. From the day I moved in, I made extra payments. Every bonus, every side gig, every tax refund straight to the mortgage. I lived lean. No new car, no big vacations. No stupid impulse buys, just slow, steady grinding, Most people didn't even notice, but Mitch did. He paid attention to everything. One time he even commented on how many Amazon boxes I had in a month and joked, "Somebody's doing pretty good, huh?" At the time, I thought he was just weirdly observant. Then about a year after I moved in, he claimed he got hurt at his job, said his back was wrecked. Suddenly he was on disability and home all the time. I felt bad for him at first. He looked like a guy who'd worked his whole life. So when he needed help replacing a piece of siding or moving some boxes, I helped. I didn't think anything of it, but he got bolder as time went on. He'd ask how much I made, what I did for work, how I could afford certain things. I always brushed him off politely. But the more distant I stayed, the more he seemed to dig. The weird thing was, he acted like we were close, like I owed him answers. Like my life was some neighborhood project and he was the unofficial manager. So when I finally made that last mortgage payment 6 months ago, I didn't tell him. I didn't tell anyone except my mom. It was personal. It was mine. But word gets around, especially when the letter accidentally got delivered to Mitch's mailbox instead of mine. He gave it to me with this overly friendly grin and said, "Congrats, man. Must be nice." At the time, I didn't think anything of it. I didn't see the resentment creeping behind his eyes. 2 weeks later, at a neighborhood block party, he joked loudly that I must be selling something on the side because nobody pays off a house at 33 unless they've got a little side hustle. I laughed it off. Everyone laughed it off. But apparently the seeds were already planted. Zero warning, zero confrontation, just whispers behind my back that grew into loud gossip, which grew into suspicion, which turned into my own family calling me secretive and concerning. I didn't know any of this until the cops showed up. That's how far it spread. I kept replaying all those little moments, every strange question he ever asked, every sideways comment, and suddenly the pattern was so obvious it almost made me feel stupid. He'd been watching me, measuring me, comparing me. And the day that mortgage letter ended up in his hands was the day he decided I didn't deserve what I had. But back then, I still thought it was just jealousy. I had no idea it was so much deeper than that. That he wasn't just trying to humiliate me, he was trying to ruin me. And I didn't understand why, until the first twist hit me so hard it knocked the breath out of my chest. After the cops left my driveway and the neighbors finally stopped staring at me like I was about to pull a gun out of my mailbox, I shut myself inside and just paced. I couldn't focus on work, couldn't eat. My phone kept buzzing with half-hearted texts from family asking, "Is everything okay?" The same family who had already decided something must be wrong with me. Every time I looked out the window, Mitch was there. Not even pretending to be subtle anymore. He'd stand in his driveway with a coffee mug, talking to whatever neighbor wandered past, leaning in close like he was sharing inside information. And I could feel it, every look, every whisper like smoke leaking under a door. The worst part was how fast it escalated. 2 days after the police incident, a neighbor who had always been friendly, Mrs. Dalton, quickly crossed the street when she saw me outside. She had baked me banana bread once. Now she wouldn't even meet my eyes. Then my cousin, who practically lived at my house during college, sent me a long message saying he needed some distance because there are things you don't tell us, man. He didn't even call. Just texted. I kept replaying Mitch's words. Normal people don't pay off homes at your age. It wasn't just an insult. It was a belief. He believed something was wrong with me, and somehow he convinced other people too. And the more isolated I got, the bolder he became. One morning, I stepped outside to grab a package, and Mitch said, loud enough for the couple walking their dog to hear, "Hope that's not more product coming in." I froze. He just smirked. That same afternoon, I noticed a white SUV idling on our street for over an hour. A guy inside pretended to be on his phone, but he kept glancing in my direction. I don't know if he was actually watching me, or if the paranoia had finally sunk in, but I shut all my blinds anyway. It felt like my life had gone from quiet and boring to suffocating overnight. And then came the thing that really set me off. I was taking my trash bins to the curb when I heard Mitch's garage door open. Loud music played, hammering sounds, the smell of sawdust. He was disabled, remember, couldn't work, could barely move, according to his claim. Yet there he was, cutting long planks of flooring, bending, lifting, moving around like a man with a perfectly healthy spine. A contractor's truck was parked outside too, though Mitch was doing most of the heavy work himself. That's when I saw it, a stack of boxes labeled kitchen cabinet set full renovation. Full renovation, on disability money. I just stood there, watching him work like nothing was wrong, while my reputation was falling apart because of his lies. It was like something inside me snapped. Not rage, not hatred, just a cold, sharp clarity. He ruined my name because he was jealous. He wanted people to look at me with suspicion so nobody would notice what he was doing. But I still didn't understand how deep it went. Not until I saw something on his porch the next day that made my stomach twist. A clipboard, open, papers flapping in the wind. When he walked inside for a moment, curiosity got the better of me. I walked over pretending to grab my mail and glanced at the papers. The top sheet was bolded at the top. Disability claim reevaluation, home visit scheduled next week. A home visit, to confirm he was still unable to perform physical labor. And suddenly everything clicked. The rumors, the harassment, the lies. He wasn't just jealous. He was terrified. And in his mind, if he dragged me down far enough, if I looked like the suspicious one, the shady one, nobody would pay attention to his fraud. But he wasn't stupid. No. Mitch had been planning something even bigger than smearing my name. And the first twist, the one that shattered everything I thought I knew, was about to hit me the very next morning when a stranger knocked on my door and said 5 words that made my blood run cold. "I'm here about your complaint." The guy at my door was wearing a windbreaker with a small state seal on the chest. Not police, not code enforcement, something else. He held a clipboard tucked against his side like it contained the fate of the universe. "I'm here about your complaint," he repeated. My stomach dropped. I didn't file a complaint." He looked confused, then double-checked the address. "This is 1478 Ridgeview, right?" "Yeah." He flipped the clipboard around, and my name was right there on the form. Filed 2 days ago. Anonymous teepster, me. Complaint subject, my own house. Allegation. Suspicious financial activity/unusual home payments. I swear my vision went blurry for a second. He kept talking, something about needing to clarify a few details. But I barely heard him. All I could hear was Mitch's voice from that day. "Normal people don't pay off homes at your age." Mitch had filed a complaint pretending to be me. He forged my name. He submitted official paperwork accusing me of accusing myself. I don't know if it was genius or insane, but it worked. It made me look unstable. Guilty, paranoid. The kind of person who might rat himself out because he was spiraling. And suddenly, everything snapped into place. He wasn't spreading rumors randomly. He wasn't slipping up. He was building a case around me. Layer by layer, lie by lie. He wanted every agency, every neighbor, every person in my orbit to see me as dangerous, suspicious, unreliable. He wanted me under such heavy scrutiny that nobody would ever question him. The man from the state was polite, at least. He asked a few uncomfortable questions about my income, then apologized for the inconvenience and left after about 15 minutes. But the embarrassment, standing there explaining my perfectly legal mortgage payoff to a stranger, was like being stripped naked in my own home. After he left, I walked outside in a daze and saw Mitch on his porch. Leaning on the railing, smiling, not a friendly smile, a tight, satisfied smirk like he'd been waiting to see my reaction. "You got visitors?" he asked casually. "Everything okay?" I didn't answer. I just stared at him, trying to understand how someone could do this. How someone could wake up in the morning and choose destruction like it was breakfast. That's when he said something that made my skin crawl. "You know, man, you bring a lot of heat on yourself. Might want to be careful. People talk." People talk, people talk, people talk. He said it like a threat. Soft, subtle, designed to sit under my skin and rot. I felt something inside me shift. Not anger, something colder. Something clean and sharp, like a blade pressed against the inside of my ribs. I walked back into my house, shut the door, and locked it. I had been humiliated, branded, isolated. Meanwhile, Mitch had renovated half his house on fraudulent disability checks and was gearing up for a home visit he clearly had no intention of failing. And now he had escalated to forging my name on official documents. He wasn't just trying to smear me, he was preemptively framing me in case his own lies collapsed. But he made one mistake. A big one. Huge. Because filing that fake complaint created a paper trail. A real, documented trail. One that pointed directly back to him. And as soon as I realized that, I knew exactly how I was going to take him down. But when I started digging, when I pulled up public info, property records, contractor filings, I found something I wasn't supposed to find. Something that wasn't just a mistake on his part. It was deliberate. It was planned. And it was the second twist that turned this entire nightmare into something so much darker than petty jealousy or fraud. I didn't start out wanting revenge. At first, all I wanted was to protect myself, to stop the bleeding, to get my life back. But when I sat down at my laptop and started digging into Mitch's renovation permits, property records, and whatever else I could legally find, something changed. Because the deeper I looked, the more everything lined up in a way that didn't feel random at all. Mitch hadn't just lied on his disability claim. He'd built an entire life on a foundation of fraud. I found contractor receipts, some filed, some not. Equipment rentals under his wife's name. A side business registered 3 years ago that he'd never once mentioned to anyone. And the cherry on top, a permit request for a basement remodel filed during the period he claimed he could barely walk. That wasn't a slip. That was arrogance. And that's when something inside me finally clicked into place. This wasn't just about getting even. This was about stopping a man who had gotten comfortable destroying other people to protect himself. So I made a plan, nothing illegal, nothing impulsive, just methodical, controlled steps. Step 1, document everything. I screenshotted receipts, saved web pages, took time-stamped pictures of him hauling lumber into his garage. I filmed him lifting boxes he definitely shouldn't have been able to lift if he were truly disabled. I even recorded the sound of power tools from over the fence. Step 2, gather his inconsistencies. I walked through every rumor he started about me, dates, conversations, witnesses, the police report. I pulled up the arrival time of the state inspector he sent to my door with the fake complaint. All evidence of a smear campaign. Step 3, connect the motive. This part was easier than I expected. A reevaluation home visit scheduled for next week. A house mid-renovation. A disability claim built on the lie of severe mobility limitations. And then, a sudden aggressive effort to make me look suspicious, financially, behaviorally, socially. If he could get me flagged, investigated, distrusted, nobody would be looking at him. Simple, effective, psychotic. Step 4. Decide who to send the package to. I printed out everything, organized it into folders, labeled each segment clearly. I wasn't going to half-ass this. If the government wanted a clean case, I was about to hand them a gift-wrapped one. But I didn't send it right away. I waited, I watched, I listened. I needed to know what he was planning next because something still didn't add up. His behavior wasn't just defensive, he was too confident, too bold. Almost like he believed he was invincible. And that bothered me enough to slow down. Then one night, around 11, while I was sitting in the dark living room reviewing my evidence, I saw headlights outside. A car pulled into Mitch's driveway, a big black SUV I'd never seen before. 2 men got out, not contractors, not friends. They were dressed too clean, too sharp. They didn't knock. They didn't text. They walked straight into his house like they'd been told the door would be unlocked. I moved to my window and watched. 20 minutes later they left, carrying a long, narrow case between them. They loaded it carefully into the back of the SUV. Mitch followed them out, shaking one man's hand, laughing like they'd just closed some amazing deal. And that's when the second twist hit me. Hard, cold, sickening. Because I recognized the case. Not from real life, from my cousin who hunts. It was a rifle case, a very expensive one. And seeing that case, seeing Mitch hand something off to 2 strangers in the middle of the night, sent a chill down my spine that I still can't fully explain. Because it meant one thing, Mitch's fraud wasn't the whole story. His renovation wasn't the whole story. His lies about me weren't the whole story. He wasn't just hiding disability fraud. He was hiding something else, something bigger, something dangerous. And suddenly, exposing him wasn't just revenge, it was survival. I couldn't shake the image of that rifle case being carried out of Mitch's house. I barely slept. Every noise outside made my heart jump. I kept telling myself it could have been anything. Maybe he bought a collectible, maybe he sold some old hunting gear, maybe it was innocent. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Nothing about Mitch had been innocent for a long time. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of him hammering again. Fast, loud, frantic. Not renovation work, panic work, cover-up work. like he was trying to finish something before someone saw it. My hands were still shaking when I opened my laptop. I didn't even know what I was looking for, but something told me to search deeper. Not just public records, everything. 15 minutes later, I found it. A news article from 3 years ago. Small, local, barely any details. Local man questioned in workplace inventory discrepancy investigation. The man's name? Mitchell Harding, my neighbor. The injury that put him on disability happened 2 weeks after that investigation opened. 2 weeks. But that wasn't the twist. The twist came when I found the follow-up article. Case closed, missing equipment not recovered. The missing equipment? Firearms, high-end rifles, suppressors, scopes, custom parts. $38,000 worth. And the suspect, Mitch, had suddenly become unable to work due to an on-the-job injury during that same period. My stomach dropped so hard I had to sit down. He didn't get hurt. He ran. He claimed disability so he wouldn't have to answer questions. And those men in the SUV, they weren't friends. They weren't buddies. They were buyers. He was still selling equipment. Equipment that had never been recovered. He wasn't just committing disability fraud. He was committing federal crimes. And suddenly, everything he did to me made horrifying sense. If the neighborhood focused on me, if the cops were watching me, if state agencies were looking at me, then nobody would be looking at his house, his shop, his renovations, or what was hidden inside his walls. He wasn't smearing me because he hated me. He was smearing me because I was the perfect decoy. Quiet, young, paid-off house, easy target. He wanted me drowning in suspicion so he could keep operating behind my back. Right next door, close enough to watch me take the fall if anything went wrong. My hands went cold. I felt sick. And then, just when I thought the horror had peaked, another realization hit me like a punch. The reevaluation home visit scheduled for next week. If the inspector saw him moving normally, lifting tools, walking around fine, his claim would collapse. And men like Mitch, men who operate in the shadows, men who hide stolen weapons, don't let their lives collapse quietly. That rifle case, that late-night meeting, the frantic hammering, he wasn't preparing for the home visit. He was preparing for what happened after the home visit, either hiding evidence or moving it into someone else's home. And I knew exactly whose home that would be. Mine. The neighbor he'd already painted as suspicious. The one the cops already visited. The one he'd already forged documents under. The one nobody would believe. Suddenly, reporting him wasn't enough. This wasn't just revenge. This wasn't even justice. This was self-defense, because Mitch wasn't planning to ruin my life. He was planning to destroy it. I used to think Mitch was just a bitter, jealous man who hated seeing someone younger succeed. I thought maybe he felt threatened by me, or embarrassed, or insecure about his own life. That's what everyone says, right? He's just jealous, like it explains everything. But jealousy doesn't make someone forge documents. Jealousy doesn't make someone plant rumors that could get you arrested. Jealousy doesn't make someone try to frame you for crimes they committed. Jealousy doesn't turn a normal neighbor into a monster. The real reason, the real truth, hit me 2 days later when I overheard a conversation that changed everything. I was taking trash out late at night when I heard voices coming from Mitch's backyard. Not the usual laughter or banter he had with contractors. This was quiet, careful, serious. "Can't have him messing it up," one voice said. "Then make him the problem," another replied. "You already started that." My heart pounded. I froze in the shadows by my shed. Mitch's voice came next, low, tense, nothing like the fake friendly tone he used in public. "I told you he's perfect for it. 33, lives alone, pays off a house early, makes good money. He fits the profile." Fits the profile, that phrase didn't make sense at first. And then Mitch kept talking. "He gets flagged, they focus on him, not me. He looks like the kind of guy who's hiding something. Nobody looks twice at the injured homeowner just trying to get by." My stomach twisted. This wasn't jealousy. It was calculation. Cold, deliberate calculation. He hadn't chosen me because I annoyed him. He hadn't chosen me because he hated me. He chose me because I was convenient, because I was quiet, because I was young, because I didn't have a spouse or kids or a loud social life. Because if something illegal surfaced, I had no one to vouch for me. Not family, not neighbors, not anyone he'd already turned against me. I wasn't a rival to Mitch. I was a shield, a human shield. And then he said the part that made my blood run cold. If he goes down, it buys me months. Maybe a year. They'll spend all that time chasing him instead of checking my records. It's perfect. I just need him to look unstable enough. Unstable. The fake complaint. The rumors. The police. The distancing of my neighbors. He orchestrated all of it, not because he cared about my life one way or another, but because he needed a scapegoat to keep his own operation hidden. He was willing to ruin me, not metaphorically, not emotionally, but literally ruin my life, because it benefited him. Then one of the men asked, "And if he pushes back?" Mitch didn't even hesitate. "Then we escalate. Whatever it takes, he's disposable, disposable." I don't know how long I stood there, staring into the dark, listening to the man who'd said welcome to the neighborhood 4 years ago talk about me like I was a broken part he needed to replace. Disposable. He never hated me. He never envied me. He never cared enough to feel anything like that. To him, I wasn't a neighbor. I wasn't a person. I was a tool. A patsy. A nobody he could set on fire to warm his own hands. And that realization, under that cold Colorado night air, hit me harder than anything else he'd done. It wasn't that Mitch was cruel. It was that cruelty meant nothing to him. He didn't feel guilt. He didn't feel fear. He didn't feel remorse. He felt nothing. He destroyed people the way other people prune trees, quietly, routinely, without a second thought. And when I finally stepped back inside my house, shutting the door gently so he wouldn't hear, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Revenge wasn't optional anymore. It was necessary, not out of spite, not out of anger. But because if I didn't end this, cleanly, decisively, permanently, he would. And when a man like Mitch decides to end you, he doesn't leave loose ends. I woke up the next morning with a kind of clarity I'd never felt before. No shaking hands, no panic, no spiraling, just a cold, steady focus. I wasn't going to confront Mitch. I wasn't going to warn him. I wasn't going to make the same mistake he made, leaving loose ends. I was going to end this the right way, the legal way, the permanent way. I started with the evidence packet I'd built, every photo, every screenshot, every clip of him carrying full boxes while unable to lift, every receipt tied to his renovation projects. I added the timeline of the missing firearms from his old workplace, the articles linking him to the inventory scandal, and the footage of the two men taking the rifle case out of his house. Then I added the most important piece, an anonymous statement, not from me, from a concerned neighbor. Inside it, I laid out everything he'd done to me, what he'd tried to frame me for, how he used me as a decoy, how he spread rumors to divert attention. I didn't include my name. I didn't need to. People like Mitch always assume the person standing closest is the easiest target. He never saw me step out of that role. The agencies I sent the packet to were the ones he feared the most. Colorado Division of Disability, Fraud ATF State Labor Department, U.S. Postal Inspector, because he forged official mail, and the local police, with a note referencing the illegal weapons case I sent each one separately. No return address. No digital footprint. Then I waited. It didn't take long. 4 days later, 2 days before his disability reevaluation, 8 unmarked cars and 2 ATF vans rolled onto our street. Not slowly. Not quietly. They boxed in his driveway before he even stepped outside. I watched from my window as Mitch walked out onto his porch in gym shorts, holding a cup of coffee, confused, just for a second before pure, cold fear spread across his face. They didn't knock. They didn't chat. They didn't hesitate. They cuffed him right there on his front steps. His wife was screaming. Neighbors were pouring outside. Phones were recording. Everything Mitch did to me, all the humiliation, all the suspicion, hit him in seconds, like karma flipping the script in front of the entire damn street. They spent hours inside his house. Loud banging, drills, boxes coming out, locked cases being carried to vans. When they wheeled out a long metal locker on a dolly, I knew that was the stash, the missing equipment he'd hidden for years. And this time, it wasn't going into an SUV at midnight. It was going into federal custody. By that evening, rumors were everywhere. But for the first time in months, I wasn't the target. People whispered things like, I knew something was off about him, and he always seemed too confident. Funny how the tone shifts once the truth has a badge behind it. Mrs. Dalton brought cookies to my door the next day. My aunt called crying, apologizing for doubting me. My cousin texted a long paragraph begging me to forgive him. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt quiet. Because none of them had been there when I was standing alone on my lawn being questioned by police. None of them cared when Mitch was spreading lies about me. None of them defended me when I needed someone the most. But I wasn't out for emotional revenge. I just wanted my life back, and I got it. A month later, Mitch's house went up for sale, bank seizure. He took a plea deal. Fraud, weapons charges, forgery, 5 years minimum. The neighborhood slowly went back to normal. People waved again. They invited me to cookouts again. But I kept my distance. Not out of hatred, just because I learned the hard way that not everyone who smiles at you is on your side. And late one night, I walked through my quiet living room, looked at the framed mortgage payoff letter on my wall, and felt, for the first time in months, peace. Mitch tried to turn me into a shield. He tried to destroy me. He thought I was quiet. He thought I was passive. He thought I was disposable. He forgot one thing: a quiet man with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous neighbor you can create.